Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of Talking Freight, the weekly freight series brought to you by Ceresys, a North American 3PL focusing on transportation management solutions for shippers. Don't miss a single episode. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell to get a notification every time we publish Talking Freight every Friday. Want to make sure you get an email? Once you hit that bell and you get an email, make sure you turn on email notifications as well. We continue our series on all things capacity crunch by looking back at previous capacity crunches and what shippers did then to thrive. Naturally, next week, we'll not only take these learnings to thrive and survive in a capacity crunch, but we'll give you 10 more tips to allow you to mitigate what many experts call the worst capacity crunch we may ever see that will happen here this year in 2018. But first, let's talk about what shippers did in previous capacity crunches for today's episode. Some of the tightest capacity crunches in history have occurred within the last 2 decades. In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, capacity hit a breaking point. The same held true after Superstorm Sandy and the unyielding winter of 2014. In addition, the driver shortage has continually grown worse in the last 8 years, and it is expected to continue through 2026. However, shippers have learned a few things about how to respond when Mother Nature, consumers, or market forces throw a proverbial curveball when a capacity crunch hits. So, let's talk about the first thing. A go-to solution for responding to previous crunches have been higher freight rates, and while carriers have traditionally been in control of this, shippers can no longer pass the costs along to consumers directly. In other words, shippers must include the average cost of shipping when determining product price points and incorporate it in a way that does not appear to cost more than shopping with a competitor. Who does that really well? Amazon. Now, after the Great Recession, retailers and manufacturers could negotiate substantially lower freight rates with carriers and logistics providers. However, retailers and manufacturers underestimated the power of the carrier, and as demand increased, carriers now have the advantage to increase rates to the dismay of shippers. In response, shippers are devoting larger portions of transportation budgets to ship directly to consumers. By eliminating the need for consolidation or using parcel or small package freight options, shippers can tap into lower per package rates and have better savings for both the consumer and the company itself. Another strategy that has worked in the past to keep carriers from putting forth outrageous rate hikes is appeasement. Many shippers tend to change their business processes to be more carrier-friendly to eliminate the extra work required by carriers, and in turn, carriers are more likely to put that shipper's freight first. Essentially, this ensures a certain shipper receives preferential treatment when sending their product. Of course, this strategy has been around for some time, so shippers really must think outside of the box and use new technologies to make that tactic more effective. And speaking of technology, new technology and platforms such as a transportation management system, or TMS, can effectively eliminate much of the paperwork for both shippers and carriers. Shippers can schedule freight, pickup, delivery, print bills of lading, input package details, and without having to call multiple carriers asking for quotes, perhaps using up the time of both carriers and themselves as a shipper. Furthermore, shippers using technology to simplify the process for drivers are less likely to encounter pushback from carriers regarding treatment of drivers. Shippers also need to reduce the amount of time it takes for drivers to load and unload their trailers. So, more shippers may turn to implementing a yard management system, or YMS, or maybe establish better protocols for gate management to streamline the loading and unloading process. Finally, as a response to previous capacity crunches, shippers turn to consolidation. Freight consolidation is the ultimate solution to any capacity crunch. While capacity may be near 100%, chances are good availability exists somewhere. Carriers have a personal stake in eliminating deadhead, reducing the number of miles driven by an empty load. When shippers take the time to understand carriers' routes and networks, shippers can work directly with carriers to eliminate deadhead, tapping into an almost inexhaustible resource for added capacity. So, what do past responses mean for responding to this current capacity crunch? The capacity crunches of the past revealed these keys to overcoming short-term and long-term capacity issues, and shippers need to start using them today. Make freight attractive to carriers. Use technology to work with carriers and drivers. Eliminate deadhead and take advantage of multimodal shipping options whenever possible. These are simple steps that will have a big impact on your ability to survive the next capacity crunch too. And to that point, next week on Talking Freight, we'll focus on 10 tips that shippers can implement now in their current capacity crunch. Well, that's it for this week's episode of Talking Freight. We continue our series on the capacity crunch next week, where we'll continue to give you more tips to survive in this forthcoming huge capacity crunch that experts are truly writing a lot about here early in 2018. And hey, just like we said at the top of the video, make sure you subscribe. It's a great way to make sure you don't miss a single episode. We've also started a new thing where we send out each episode every Saturday right to your email inbox. So how do you get that? Simple. Go to Cerasis.com, make sure you scroll down about halfway down the page. You'll see a box pop up in the bottom right. Put in your email address and we'll add you to the distribution list. And hey, don't want to sign up for our email newsletter? We don't mind. Make sure you follow us here on social media. You're going to see some great tweets, a lot of good Facebook posts, and you'll be able to double tap our images on Instagram too. We hope you have a good weekend. We'll see you next week.